Hi, and welcome back to the Wuthering Heights Read Aloud. So last week, Cathy fell very ill after the altercation between Edgar and Heathcliff, and Edgar's ultimatum to her about choosing him or Heathcliff. So Cathy's very ill, and Isabella has just run away with Heathcliff. And that's where we are now. Chapter 13. For 2 months, the fugitives remained absent. In those 2 months, Mrs. Linton encountered and conquered the worst shock of what was denominated a brain fever. No mother could have nursed an only child more devotedly than Edgar tended her. Day and night he was watching, and patiently enduring all the annoyances that irritable nerves and a shaken reason could inflict. And, though Kenneth remarked that what he saved from the grave would only recompense his care by forming the source of constant future anxiety, in fact, that his health and strength were being sacrificed to preserve a mere ruin of humanity, he knew no limits in gratitude and joy when Catherine's life was declared out of danger. And hour after hour he would sit beside her, tracing the gradual return to bodily health, and flattering his too sanguine hopes with the illusion that her mind would settle back to its right balance also, and she would soon be entirely her former self. The first time she left her chamber was at the commencement of the following March. Mr. Linton had put on her pillow in the morning a handful of golden crocuses. Her eye, long stranger to any gleam of pleasure, caught them in waking, and shone delighted as she gathered them eagerly together. "These are the earliest flowers at the Heights," she exclaimed. "They remind me of soft thaw winds and warm sunshine and nearly melted snow. Edgar, is there not a south wind, and is not the snow almost gone?" "The snow is quite gone down here, darling," replied her husband, "and I only see 2 white spots on the whole range of moors. The sky is blue, and the larks are singing, and the becks and brooks are all brim full. Catherine, last spring at this time I was longing to have you under this roof. Now I wish you were a mile or 2 up those hills. The air blows so sweetly I feel that it would cure you." "I shall never be there but once more," said the invalid, "and then you'll leave me, and I shall remain forever. Next spring you'll long again to have me under this roof, and you'll look back and think you were happy today." Linton lavished on her the kindest caresses, and tried to cheer her by the fondest words, but vaguely regarding the flowers, she let the tears collect on her lashes and stream down her cheeks unheeding. We knew she was really better, and therefore decided that long confinement to a single place produced much of this despondency, and it might be partially removed by a change of scene. The master told me to light a fire in the many weeks deserted parlor, and to set an easy chair in the sunshine by the window, and then he brought her down, and she sat a long while enjoying the genial heat, and, as we expected, revived by the objects round her, which, though familiar, were free from the dreary associations investing her hated sick chamber. By evening she seemed greatly exhausted, yet no arguments could persuade her to return to that apartment, and I had to arrange the parlor sofa for her bed till another room could be prepared. To obviate the fatigue of mounting and descending the stairs, we fitted up this, where you lie at present, on the same floor with the parlor, and she was soon strong enough to move from one to the other, leaning on Edgar's arm. Yes, because Nellie is still speaking to Mr. Lockwood, who I think is sick right now. Or he's he was sick and is getting better. Anyway. I thought myself, she might recover, so waited on as she was, and there was a double cause to desire it, for on her existence depended that of another. We cherished the hope that in a little while Mr. Linton's heart would be gladdened, and his hand secured from a stranger's gripe by the birth of an heir. Oh, she's pregnant. Interesting. I should mention that Isabella sent to her brother, some 6 weeks from her departure, a short note announcing her marriage with Heathcliff. It appeared dry and cold, but at the bottom was dotted in with pencil an obscure apology and an entreaty for kind remembrance and reconciliation if her proceeding had offended him, asserting that she could not help it then, and being done, she had now no power to repeal it. Linton did not reply to this, I believe, and in a fortnight more I got a long letter which I considered odd, coming from the pen of a bride just out of the honeymoon. I'll read it, for I keep it yet. Any relic of the dead is precious, if they were valued living. Okay, so Isabella is dead too. "Dear Ellen," it begins, "I came last night to Wuthering Heights, and heard for the first time that Catherine has been, and is yet, very ill. I must not write to her, I suppose, and my brother is either too angry or too distressed to answer what I send him. Still, I must write to somebody, and the only choice left me is you. Inform Edgar that I'd give the world to see his face again. that my heart returned to Thrushcross Grange in 24 hours after I left it, and is there at this moment, full of warm feelings for him and Catherine. I can't follow it, though. Those words are underlined. They need not expect me, and they may draw what conclusions they please, taking care, however, to lay nothing at the door of my weak will or deficient affection. The remainder of the letter is for yourself alone. I want to ask you 2 questions. The first is, how did you contrive to preserve the common sympathies of human nature when you resided here? I cannot recognize any sentiment which those around share with me. The second question I have great interest in. It is this. Is Mr. Heathcliff a man? If so, is he mad? And if not, is he a devil? I shan't tell my reasons for making this inquiry, but I beseech you to explain, if you can, what I have married. That is, when you call to see me, and you must call, Ellen, very soon, don't write, but come, and bring me something from Edgar. Now you shall hear how I have been received in my new home, as I am led to imagine the Heights will be. It is to amuse myself that I dwell on such subjects as the lack of external comforts. They never occupy my thoughts, except at the moment when I miss them. I should laugh and dance for joy if I found their absence was the total of my miseries and the rest was an unnatural dream. The sun set behind the Grange as we turned on to the moors. By that I judged it to be 6 o'clock, and my companion halted half an hour to inspect the park and the gardens, and probably the place itself, as well as he could. So it was dark when we dismounted in the paved yard of the farmhouse, and your old fellow-servant, Joseph, issued out to receive us by the light of a dip candle. He did it with a courtesy that redounded to his credit. His first act was to elevate his torch to a level with my face, squint malignantly, project his underlip, and turn away. Then he took the 2 horses and led them into the stables, reappearing for the purpose of locking the outer gate, as if we lived in an ancient castle. Heathcliff stayed to speak to him, and I entered the kitchen. A dingy, untidy hole. I dare say you would not know it, it is so changed since it was in your charge. By the fire stood a ruffianly child, strong in limb and dirty in garb, with a look of Catherine in his eyes and about his mouth. This is Edgar's legal nephew, I reflected. Mine in a manner. I must shake hands, and yes, I must kiss him. It is right to establish a good understanding at the beginning. I approached, and attempting to take his chubby fist, said, "How do you do, my dear?" He replied in a jargon I did not comprehend. "Shan't you and I be friends, Hareton?" was my next essay at conversation. An oath and a threat to set Throttler on me if I did not frame off rewarded my perseverance. "Hey, Throttler, lad," whispered the little wretch, rousing a half-bred bulldog from its lair in a corner. "Now, wilta be ganging?" he asked authoritatively. Love for my life urged a compliance. I stepped over the threshold to wait till the others should enter. Mr. Heathcliff was nowhere visible, and Joseph, whom I followed to the stables, and requested to accompany me in, after staring and muttering to himself, screwed up his nose and replied, "Mim, mim, mim! Did iver a Christian body hear aught like it? Minching and munching? How can I tell what ye say?" "I say I wish you to come with me into the house," I cried, thinking him deaf, yet highly disgusted at his rudeness. "Nor na me, I'll gettin' something else to do," he answered, and continued his work, moving his lantern jaws meanwhile and surveying my dress and countenance, the former a great deal too fine, but the latter, I'm sure, as sad as he could desire, with sovereign contempt. I walked round the yard and through a wicket to another door, at which I took the liberty of knocking, in hopes some more civil servant might show himself. After a short suspense, it was opened by a tall, gaunt man without neckerchief, and otherwise extremely slovenly. His features were lost in masses of shaggy hair that hung on his shoulders, and his eyes, too, were like a ghostly Catherine's with all their beauty annihilated. "What's your business here?" he demanded grimly. "Who are you?" "My name was Isabella Linton," I replied. "You've seen me before, sir. I'm lately married to Mr. Heathcliff, and he has brought me here, I suppose by your permission?" "Is he come back, then?" asked the hermit, glaring like a hungry wolf. "Yes, we came just now," I said. "But he left me by the kitchen door, and when I would have gone in, your little boy played sentinel over the place and frightened me off by the help of a bulldog." "It's well the hellish villain has kept his word," growled my future host, searching the darkness beyond me in expectation of discovering Heathcliff. And then he indulged in a soliloquy of execrations and threats of what he would have done had the fiend deceived him. I repented having tried this second entrance, and was almost inclined to slip away before he finished cursing, but ere I could execute that intention, he ordered me in, and shut and refastened the door. There was a great fire, and that was all the light in the huge apartment, whose floor had grown a uniform gray, and the once brilliant pewter dishes, which used to attract my gaze when I was a girl, partook of a similar obscurity created by tarnish and dust. I inquired whether I might call the maid and be conducted to a bedroom. Mr. Earnshaw vouchsafed no answer. He walked up and down with his hands in his pockets, apparently quite forgetting my presence, and his abstraction was evidently so deep, and his whole aspect so misanthropical, that I shrank from disturbing him again. You'll not be surprised, Ellen, at my feeling particularly cheerless, seated in worse than solitude on that inhospitable hearth, and remembering that 4 miles distant lay my delightful home, containing the only people I loved on earth, and there might as well be the Atlantic to part us, instead of those 4 miles. I could not overpass them. I questioned with myself, where must I turn for comfort? And, mind you, don't tell Edgar or Catherine, above every sorrow beside, this rose preeminent. Despair at finding nobody who could or would be my ally against Heathcliff. I had sought shelter at Wuthering Heights almost gladly, because I was secured by that arrangement from living alone with him, but he knew the other people we were coming amongst, and he did not fear their intermeddling. I sat and thought a doleful time. The clock struck 8 and 9, and still my companion paced to and fro, his head bent on his breast and perfectly silent, unless a groan or a bitter ejaculation forced itself out at intervals. I listened to detect a woman's voice in the house, and filled the interim with wild regrets and dismal anticipations, which at last spoke audibly in irrepressible sighing and weeping. I was not aware how openly I grieved, till Earnshaw halted opposite in his measured walk, and gave me a stare of newly awakened surprise. Taking advantage of his recovered attention, I exclaimed, "I'm tired with my journey, and I want to go to bed. Where is the maidservant? Direct me to her, as she won't come to me." "We have none," he answered. "You must wait on yourself." "Where must I sleep, then?" I sobbed. I was beyond regarding self-respect, weighed down by fatigue and wretchedness. "Joseph will show you to Heathcliff's chamber," said he. "Open that door, he's in there." I was going to obey, but he suddenly arrested me, and added in the strangest tone, "Be so good as to turn your lock, and draw your bolt. Don't omit it." "Well," I said, "but why, Mr. Earnshaw?" I did not relish the notion of deliberately fastening myself in with Heathcliff. "Look here," he replied, pulling from his waistcoat a curiously constructed pistol, having a double-edged spring knife attached to the barrel. "That's a great tempter to a desperate man, is it not? I cannot resist going up with this every night and trying his door. If once I find it open, he's done for. I do it invariably, even though the minute before I have been recalling 100 reasons that should make me refrain. It is some devil that urges me to thwart my own schemes by killing him. You fight against that devil, for love, as long as you may. When the time comes, not all the angels in heaven shall save him." Yikes. I surveyed the weapon inquisitively. A hideous notion struck me, how powerful I should be possessing such an instrument. I took it from his hand and touched the blade. He looked astonished at the expression my face assumed during a brief second. It was not horror, it was covetousness. He snatched the pistol back jealously, shut the knife, and returned it to its concealment. "I don't care if you tell him," said he. "Put him on his guard and watch for him. You know the terms we are on, I see. His danger does not shock you." "What has Heathcliff done to you?" I asked. "In what has he wronged you to warrant this appalling hatred? Wouldn't it be wiser to bid him quit the house?" "No!" thundered Earnshaw. "Should he offer to leave me, he's a dead man. Persuade him to attempt it, and you are a murderess. Am I to lose all without a chance of retrieval? Is Hareton to be a beggar? Oh, damnation, I will have it back, and I'll have his gold too, and then his blood, and hell shall have his soul. It will be 10 times blacker with that guest than ever it was before." "You've acquainted me, Ellen, with your old master's habits. He is clearly on the verge of madness. He was so last night, at least. I shuddered to be near him, and thought on the servant's ill-bred moroseness as comparatively agreeable." He now recommenced his moody walk, and I raised the latch and escaped into the kitchen. Joseph was bending over the fire, peering into a large pan that swung above it, and a wooden bowl of oatmeal stood on the settle close by. The contents of the pan began to boil, and he turned to plunge his hand into the bowl. I conjectured that this preparation was probably for our supper, and being hungry, I resolved it should be eatable, so, crying out sharply, "I'll make the porridge!" I removed the vessel out of his reach and proceeded to take off my hat and riding habit. "Mr. Earnshaw," I continued, "directs me to wait on myself. I will. I'm not going to act the lady among you, for fear I should starve." "Good Lord," he muttered, sitting down and stroking his ribbed stockings from the knee to the ankle. "If they's to be fresh ortherings, just when I'll getting used to two meisters, if I mun have a mistress set o'er my head, it's like time to be flitting. I never did think to say today at all mud lave the old place, but all dat it's nigh at hand." This lamentation drew no notice from me. I went briskly to work, sighing to remember a period when it would have been all merry fun, but compelled speedily to drive off the remembrance. It racked me to recall past happiness, and the greater peril there was of conjuring up its apparition, the quicker the thibble ran round, and the faster the handfuls of meal fell into the water. Joseph beheld my style of cookery with growing indignation. "There!" he ejaculated. "Hareton, thou willet sup thy porridge to neat. There'll be nowt bud lumps as big as maud knave. There ageen. I'd fling in bowl un all if all were ya. Theer pale to gilp off, and then y'all ha done wit. Bang, bang. It's a marcy to Botham isn't deeved aught." It was rather a rough mess, I own, when poured into the basins. 4 had been provided, and a gallon pitcher of new milk was brought from the dairy, which Hareton seized and commenced drinking and spilling from the expansive lip. I expostulated and desired he should have his in a mug, affirming that I could not taste the liquid treated so dirtily. The old cynic chose to be vastly offended at this nicety, assuring me repeatedly that the bairn was every bit as good as I, and every bit as wholesome, and wondering how I could fashion to be so conceited. Meanwhile, the infant ruffian continued sucking, and glowered up at me defyingly as he slavered into the jug. "I shall have my supper in another room," I said. "Have you no place you call a parlour?" "Parlour," he echoed sneeringly. "Parlour! Nay, we've no parlours. If ya done it like were company, they's maisters. And if ya done it like master, they's us." "Then I shall go upstairs," I answered. "Show me a chamber." I put my basin on a tray, and went myself to fetch some more milk. With great grumblings, the fellow rose, and preceded me in my ascent. We mounted to the garrets, he opening a door now and then to look into the apartments we passed. "Here's a rum," he said at last, flinging back a cranky board on hinges. "It's weel enough to ate a few porridge in. They's a pack o' corn i' de corner near Meaderly Clane. If you're fearing muckying your grand silk clothes, spread your handkercher on't." It's so annoying because, like, I kind of get the sense of what he's saying most of the time. Actually, no, maybe 50-50. I get the sense of what he's saying. But this isn't even what a Cockney accent would be written like. This is nuts. The ram was a kind of lumber hole smelling strong of malt and grain, various sacks of which articles were piled around, leaving a wide bare space in the middle. "Why, man," I exclaimed, facing him angrily, "this is not a place to sleep in. I wish to see my bedroom." "Bedroom," he repeated in a tone of mockery. "Ya see all ta bedrooms there is. Yon's mine." He pointed into the second garret, only differing from the first in being more naked about the walls and having a large, low, curtainless bed with an indigo-colored quilt at one end. "What do I want with yours?" I retorted. "I suppose Mr. Heathcliff does not lodge at the top of the house, does he?" "Oh, it's Mr. Heathcliff's you're wanting," cried he as if making a new discovery. "Couldn't ye ha' said so at onst? And then I mud telled ye, but all this wark, that's just one ya cannot see. He allus keeps it locked, and nobody iver smells on't but hisseln. Hisseln. "You've a nice house, Joseph," I could not refrain from observing, "and pleasant inmates, and I think the concentrated essence of all the madness in the world took up its abode in my brain the day I linked my fate with theirs. However, that is not to the present purpose. There are other rooms. For heaven's sake, be quick, and let me settle somewhere." He made no reply to this adjuration, only plodding doggedly down the wooden steps and halting before an apartment which, from that halt and the superior quality of its furniture, I conjectured to be the best one. There was a carpet, a good one, but the pattern was obliterated by dust, a fireplace hung with cut paper, dropping to pieces, a handsome oak bedstead with ample crimson curtains of rather expensive material and modern make, but they had evidently experienced rough usage. The valances hung in festoons, wrenched from their rings, and the iron rod supporting them was bent in an arc on one side, causing the drapery to trail upon the floor. The chairs were also damaged, many of them severely, and deep indentations deformed the panels of the walls. I was endeavoring to gather resolution for entering and taking possession when my fool of a guide announced, "This here is to Masters." Why is this kind of giving Beauty and the Beast and, like, The West Wing or whatever? My supper by this time was cold, my appetite gone, and my patience exhausted. I insisted on being provided instantly with a place of refuge and means of repose. "Where the divil," began the religious elder, "the Lord bless us, the Lord forgie us. Where the hell will ye gang? Ye marred, wearisome knout. Ye seen all but Hareton's bit of a chamber. I know it says it's chamber, but that's not what she wrote. Okay. There's not another hoyle to lig down in the house." I was so vexed, I flung my tray and its contents on the ground, and then seated myself at the stairs' head, hid my face in my hands, and cried. "Ich!" exclaimed Joseph. "Well done, Miss Cathy, well done, Miss Cathy. Hasiver to Master Salt just tumley o'er them brocken pots, and then we's hear summit. We's hear how it's to be. Good for nowt maddling. Ye deserve pining for this to Christmas, flingin' to precious gifts o' God underfoot i' your flaysome rages, but mistaken if ye shew your spirit lang. Will Heathcliff bide sich bonny ways, think ye? Aw, nubbut wish he ma cotch ye I' that plisky. Aw, nubbut wish he may." And so he went scolding to his den beneath, taking the candle with him, and I remained in the dark. The period of reflection succeeding this silly action compelled me to admit the necessity of smothering my pride and choking my wrath, and bestirring myself to remove its effects. An unexpected aid presently appeared in the shape of Throttler, whom I now recognized as a son of our old skulker. It had spent its whelphood at the Grange, and was given by my father to Mr. Hindley. I fancy it knew me. It pushed its nose against mine by way of salute, and then hastened to devour the porridge, while I groped from step to step, collecting the shattered earthenware, and drying the splatters of milk from the banister with my pocket handkerchief. Our labors were scarcely over when I heard Earnshaw's tread in the passage. My assistant tucked in his tail and pressed to the wall. I stole into the nearest doorway. The dog's endeavor to avoid him was unsuccessful, as I guessed by a scutter downstairs, and a prolonged, piteous yelping. I had better luck. He passed on, entered his chamber, and shut the door. Directly after, Joseph came up with Hareton to put him to bed. I had found shelter in Hareton's room, and the old man, on seeing me, said, "They's ram for both ye, un your pride, na sud think I' the hass. It's empty. Ye ma hev it all to yourselm, un him as allas makes a third is sich ill company." Gladly did I take advantage of this intimation, and the minute I flung myself into a chair by the fire, I nodded and slept. My slumber was deep and sweet, though over far too soon. Mr. Heathcliff awoke me. He has just come in, and demanded, in his loving manner, what I was doing there. I told him the cause of my staying up so late, that he had the key of our room in his pocket. The adjective hour gave mortal offence. He swore it was not, nor ever should be mine, but I'll not repeat his language, nor describe his habitual conduct. He is ingenious and unresting in seeking to gain my abhorrence. I sometimes wonder at him with an intensity that deadens my fear, yet I assure you a tiger or a venomous serpent could not rouse terror in me equal to that which he wakens. He told me of Catherine's illness, and accused my brother of causing it, promising that I should be Edgar's proxy in suffering till he could get a hold of him. I do hate him. I am wretched. I have been a fool. Beware of uttering one breath of this to anyone at the Grange. I shall expect you every day. Don't disappoint me. Isabella. Chapter 14. As soon as I had perused this epistle, I went to the master and informed him that his sister had arrived at the Heights, and sent me a letter expressing her sorrow for Mrs. Linton's situation, and her ardent desire to see him, with a wish that he would transmit to her as early as possible some token of forgiveness by me. Forgiveness! said Linton. "I have nothing to forgive her, Ellen. You may call at Wuthering Heights this afternoon, if you like, and say that I am not angry, but I'm sorry to have lost her, especially as I can never think she'll be happy. It is out of the question my going to see her, however. We are eternally divided, and should she really wish to oblige me, let her persuade the villain she has married to leave the country." "And you won't write her a little note, sir?" I asked imploringly. "No," he answered, "it is needless. My communication with Heathcliff's family shall be as sparing as his with mine. It shall not exist." Mr. Edgar's coldness depressed me exceedingly, and all the way from the Grange I puzzled my brains how to put more heart into what he said when I repeated it, and how to soften his refusal of even a few lines to console Isabella. I dare say she had been on the watch for me since morning. I saw her looking through the lattice as I came up the garden causeway, and I nodded to her, but she drew back, as if afraid of being observed. I entered without knocking. There never was such a dreary, dismal scene as the formerly cheerful house presented. I must confess that if I had been in the young lady's place, I would, at least, have swept the hearth and wiped the tables with a duster, but she already partook of the pervading spirit of neglect which encompassed her. Her pretty face was wan and listless, her hair uncurled, some locks hanging lankly down, and some carelessly twisted around her head. Probably she had not touched her dress since yester evening. Hindley was not there. Mr. Heathcliff sat at a table, turning over some papers in his pocket-book, but he rose when I appeared, asked me how I did, quite friendly, and offered me a chair. He was the only thing there that seemed decent, and I thought he never looked better. So much had circumstances altered their positions that he would certainly have struck a stranger as a born and bred gentleman, and his wife as a thorough little slattern. She came forward eagerly to greet me, and held out one hand to take the expected letter. I shook my head. She wouldn't understand the hint, but followed me to the sideboard, where I went to lay my bonnet, and importuned me in a whisper to give her directly what I had brought. Heathcliff guessed the meaning of her manoeuvres, and said, "If you have got anything for Isabella, as no doubt you have, Nelly, give it to her. You needn't make a secret of it. We have no secrets between us." "Oh, I have nothing," I replied, thinking it best to speak the truth at once. "My master bid me tell his sister that she must not expect either a letter or a visit from him at present. He sends his love, ma'am, and his wishes for your happiness, and his pardon for the grief you have occasioned. But he thinks that after this time, the household and the household there should drop into communication, as nothing good could come of keeping it up." Mrs. Heathcliff's lip quivered slightly, and she returned to her seat in the window. Her husband took his stance on the hearthstone near me, and began to put questions concerning Catherine. I told him as much as I thought proper of her illness, and he extorted from me, by cross-examination, most of the facts connected with its origin. I blamed her, as she deserved, for bringing it all on herself, and ended by hoping that he would follow Mr. Linton's example and avoid future interference with his family for good or evil. "Mrs. Linton is just now recovering," I said. "She'll never be like she was, but her life is spared. And if you really have a regard for her, you'll shun crossing her way again. Nay, you'll move out of the country entirely, and that you may not regret it, I'll inform you Catherine Linton is as different now from your old friend Catherine Earnshaw as that young lady is different from me. Her appearance is changed greatly, her character much more so, and the person who is compelled of necessity to be her companion will only sustain his affection hereafter by the remembrance of what she once was, by common humanity and a sense of duty." "That is quite possible," remarked Heathcliff, forcing himself to seem calm, "quite possible that your master should have nothing but common humanity and a sense of duty to fall back upon. But do you imagine that I shall leave Catherine to his duty and humanity? And can you compare my feelings respecting Catherine to his? Before you leave this house, I must exact a promise from you, that you'll get me an interview with her. Consent or refuse, I will see her. What do you say?" "I say, Mr. Heathcliff," I replied, "you must not. You never shall, through my means. Another encounter between you and the master would kill her altogether. With your aid, that may be avoided," he continued, "and should there be danger of such an event, should he be the cause of adding a single trouble more to her existence, why, I think I shall be justified in going to extremes. I wish you had sincerity enough to tell me whether Catherine would suffer greatly from his loss. The fear that she would restrains me, and there you see the distinction between our feelings. Had he been in my place and I in his, though I hated him with a hatred that turned my life to gall, I never would have raised a hand against him. You may look incredulous, if you please. I never would have banished him from her society as long as she desired his. The moment her regard ceased, I would have torn his heart out and drank his blood. But till then, if you don't believe me, you don't know me, till then, I would have died by inches before I touched a single hair of his head. And yet, I interrupted, you have no scruples in completely ruining all hopes of her perfect restoration by thrusting yourself into her remembrance now, when she has nearly forgotten you, and involving her in a new tumult of discord and distress. You suppose she has nearly forgotten me, he said. Oh, Nellie, you know she has not. You know well as I do that for every thought she spends on Linton, she spends 1,000 on me. At a most miserable period of my life, I had a notion of the kind. It haunted me on my return to the neighborhood last summer, but only her own assurance could make me admit the horrible idea again. And then Linton would be nothing, nor Hindley, nor all the dreams that ever I dreamt. 2 words would comprehend my future, death and hell. Existence, after losing her, would be hell. Yet I was a fool to fancy for a moment that she valued Edgar Linton's attachment more than mine. If he loved with all the powers of his puny being, he couldn't love as much in 80 years as I could in a day. And Catherine has a heart as deep as I have. The sea could be as readily contained in that horse trough as her whole affection be monopolized by him. Tush! He is scarcely a degree dearer to her than a dog or her horse. It is not in him to be loved like me. How can she love in him what he has not? Catherine and Edgar are as fond of each other as any 2 people can be, cried Isabella with sudden vivacity. No one has a right to talk in that manner, and I won't hear my brother depreciated in silence. Your brother is wondrous fond of you too, isn't he? Observed Heathcliff scornfully. He turns you adrift on the world with surprising alacrity. He is not aware of what I suffer, she replied. I didn't tell him that. You've been telling him something, then. You have written, have you? To say that I was married, I did write. You saw the note. And nothing since? No. My young lady is looking sadly the worse for her change of condition, I remarked. Somebody's love comes short in her case, obviously. Whose, I may guess, but perhaps I shouldn't say. I should guess it was her own, said Heathcliff. She degenerates into a mere slut. Whoa, okay. She is tired of trying to please me uncommonly early. You'd hardly credit it, but the very morrow of our wedding she was weeping to go home. However, she'll suit this house so much the better for not being over-nice, and I'll take care she does not disgrace me by rambling abroad. Well, sir, returned I hope you'll consider that Mrs. Heathcliff is accustomed to be looked after and waited on, and that she is brought up like an only daughter, whom everyone was ready to serve. You must let her have a maid to keep things tidy about her, and you must treat her kindly. Whatever be your notion of Mr. Edgar, you cannot doubt that she has a capacity for strong attachments, or she wouldn't have abandoned the elegancies and comforts and friends of her former home to fix contentedly in such a wilderness as this with you. She abandoned them under a delusion, he answered, picturing in me a hero of romance and expecting unlimited indulgences from my chivalrous devotion. I can hardly regard her in the light of a rational creature, so obstinately has she persisted in forming a fabulous notion of my character and acting on the false impressions she cherished. But at last I think she begins to know me. I don't perceive the silly smiles and grimaces that provoked me at first, and the senseless incapability of discerning that I was in earnest when I gave her my opinion of her infatuation and herself. It was a marvelous effort of perspicacity to discover that I did not love her. I believed at one time no lessons could teach her that, and yet it is poorly learnt, for this morning she announced as a piece of appalling intelligence that I had actually succeeded in making her hate me. A positive labor of Hercules, I assure you. If it be achieved, I have cause to return thanks. Can I trust your assertion, Isabella? Are you sure you hate me? If I let you alone for half a day, won't you come sighing and wheedling to me again? I dare say she would rather I had seemed all tenderness before you. It wounds her vanity to have the truth exposed. But I don't care who knows that the passion was wholly on one side, and I never told her a lie about it. She cannot accuse me of showing a bit of deceitful softness. The first thing she saw me do, on coming out of the Grange, was to hang up her little dog, and when she pleaded for it, the first words I uttered were a wish that I had the hanging of every being belonging to her, except one. Possibly she took that exception for herself, but no brutality disgusted her. I suppose she has an innate admiration of it, if only her precious person were secure from injury. Now was it not the depth of absurdity, of genuine idiocy for that pitiful, slavish, mean-minded brack to dream that I could love her? Tell your master, Nellie, that I never in all my life met with such an abject thing as she is. She even disgraces the name of Linton, and I've sometimes relented from pure lack of invention in my experiments on what she could endure, and still creep shamefully cringing back. But tell him also to set his fraternal and magisterial heart at ease, that I keep strictly within the limits of the law. I have avoided, up to this period, giving her the slightest right to claim a separation, and what's more, she'd thank nobody for dividing us. If she desired to go, she might. The nuisance of her presence outweighs the gratification to be derived from tormenting her. Mr. Heathcliff, said I, this is the talk of a madman, and your wife, most likely, is convinced you are mad, and for that reason she has borne with you hitherto. But now that you say she may go, she'll doubtless avail herself of the permission. You are not so bewitched, ma'am, are you, as to remain with him of your own accord? Take care, Ellen, answered Isabella, her eyes sparkling irefully. There was no misdoubting by their expression the full success of her partner's endeavours to make himself detested. Don't put faith in a single word he speaks. He's a lying fiend, a monster, and not a human being. I've been told I might leave him before, and I've made the attempt, but I dare not repeat it. Only, Ellen, promise you'll not mention a syllable of his infamous conversation to my brother or Catherine. Whatever he may pretend, he wishes to provoke Edgar to desperation. He says he has married me on purpose to obtain power over him, and he shan't obtain it. I'll die first. I just hope, I pray, that he may forget his diabolical prudence and kill me. The single pleasure I can imagine is to die or to see him dead. There, that will do for the present, said Heathcliff. If you are called upon in a court of law, you'll remember her language, Nelly. And take a good look at that countenance. She's near the point which would suit me. No, you're not fit to be your own guardian, Isabella, now, and I, being your legal protector, must retain you in my custody, however distasteful the obligation may be. Go upstairs. I have something to say to Ellen Dean in private. That's not the way. Upstairs, I tell you. Why, this is the road upstairs, child. He seized and thrust her from the room, and returned, muttering, I have no pity, I have no pity. The more the worms writhe, the more I yearn to crush out their entrails. It's a moral teething, and I grind with greater energy in proportion to the increase of pain. Do you understand what the word pity means? I said, hastening to resume my bonnet. Did you ever feel a touch of it in your life? Put that down, he interrupted, perceiving my intention to depart. You are not going yet. Come here now, Nelly. I must either persuade or compel you to aid me in fulfilling my determination to see Catherine, and that without delay. I swear that I meditate no harm. I don't desire to cause any disturbance or to exasperate or insult Mr. Linton. I only wish to hear from herself how she is, and why she has been ill, and to ask if anything that I could do would be of use to her. Last night I was in the Grange garden 6 hours, and I'll return there tonight, and every night I'll haunt the place, and every day, till I find an opportunity of entering. If Edgar Linton meets me, I shall not hesitate to knock him down, and give him enough to ensure his quiescence while I stay. If his servants oppose me, I shall threaten them off with these pistols. But wouldn't it be better to prevent my coming in contact with them, or their master? And you could do it so easily. I'd warn you when I came, and then you might let me in unobserved as soon as she was alone, and watch till I departed, your conscience quite calm, and you would be hindering mischief. I protested against playing that treacherous part in my employer's house, and besides, I urged the cruelty and selfishness of his destroying Mrs. Linton's tranquillity for his satisfaction. The commonest occurrence startles her painfully, I said. She's all nerves, and she couldn't bear the surprise, I'm positive. Don't persist, sir, or else I shall be obliged to inform my master of your designs, and he'll take measure to secure his house and its inmates from any such unwarrantable intrusions. In that case, I'll take measures to secure you, woman, exclaimed Heathcliff. You shall not leave Wuthering Heights till tomorrow morning. It is a foolish story to assert that Catherine could not bear to see me. And as to surprising her, I don't desire it. You must prepare her. Ask her if I may come. You say she never mentions my name, and that I am never mentioned to her. To whom should she mention me if I am a forbidden topic in the house? She thinks you are all spies for her husband. Oh, I've no doubt she's in hell among you. I guess by her silence as much as anything what she feels. You say she is often restless and anxious-looking. Is that a proof of tranquillity? You talk of her mind being unsettled. How the devil could it be otherwise in her frightful isolation? And that insipid, paltry creature attending her from duty and humanity, from pity and charity? He might as well plant an oak in a flower pot and expect it to thrive, as imagine he can restore her to vigor in the soil of his shallow cares. Let us settle it at once. Will you stay here, and am I to fight my way to Catherine over Linton and his footmen? Or will you be my friend, as you have been hitherto, and do what I request? Decide, because there is no reason for my lingering another minute if you persist in your stubborn ill nature. Well, Mr. Lockwood, I argued and complained, and flatly refused him 50 times, but in the long run he forced me to an agreement. I engaged to carry a letter from him to my mistress, and should she consent, I promised to let him have intelligence of Linton's next absence from home, when he might come and get in as he was able. I wouldn't be there, and my fellow servants should be equally out of the way. Was it right or wrong? I fear it was wrong, though expedient. I thought I prevented another explosion by my compliance, and I thought, too, it might create a favorable crisis in Catherine's mental illness. And then I remembered Mr. Edgar's stern rebuke of my carrying tales, and I tried to smooth away all disquietude on the subject by affirming with frequent iteration that the betrayal of trust, if it merited so harsh an appellation, should be the last. Notwithstanding, my journey homeward was sadder than my journey thither, and many misgivings I had ere I could prevail on myself to put the missive into Mrs. Linton's hand. But here is Kenneth. I'll go down and tell him how much better you are. My history is dree, as we say, and will serve to while away another morning. Dree and dray, I reflected as the good woman descended to receive the doctor, and not exactly a kind which I should have chosen to amuse me. But never mind. I'll extract wholesome medicines from Mrs. Dean's bitter herbs, and firstly, let me beware of the fascination that lurks in Catherine Heathcliff's brilliant eyes. I should be in a curious taking if I surrendered my heart to that young person and the daughter turned out a second edition of the mother. And that's the end of chapter 14. We are almost halfway through. Not quite. I think we have like maybe one more chapter to go and we'll be halfway through. So things got really intense in those last 2 chapters. So Kathy is better, but to what degree? It's unclear. They say that bodily she's better and much restored, but her mind is very fragile and she will never again be what she was. So curious to see how that plays out. But I guess she's not going to die of that fever, or the acute version of that fever or illness that she had last chapter. And she's pregnant, which also kind of feels crazy. And then we had that harrowing letter from Isabella and the fact that she's being very, very abused by Heathcliff, and Wuthering Heights sounds horrible. Then Nellie comes to visit Isabella in that last chapter, and Heathcliff has like a beautiful speech. Every time Kathy and Heathcliff talk about each other, it's like, it's gorgeous. But wow, now, you know, Heathcliff's true character is really starting to be shown. I feel like I could have not forgiven, but I feel like I could have kind of been like, all right, he's a bad person, but I'm like willing to hear out his story or whatever and give him some of the benefit of the doubt due to his upbringing, whatever. But now, after marrying Isabella, and obviously we're not sure exactly what he's doing to Isabella, but I'm sure it's horrible, when he said, don't worry, everything's legal that I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, well, you can do a lot of things legally to women in this time, especially if they were your wife. So just because it's legal doesn't mean it's good or okay in any way. Yeah, this has really kind of been a turning point in my personal opinion of Heathcliff. Again, not that I had like a good opinion of Heathcliff, but I had a more like slightly negative but mostly neutral opinion of him as just a character, of like giving him a bit of a benefit of the doubt, not necessarily rooting for him, but not thinking that he's like beyond redeemable. But after these 2 chapters, I'm like, yeah, no, you're a horrible person. You're a horrible, abusive person. And, you know, your one redeeming quality of having this intense love for Catherine still isn't good. So doesn't make you good or, you know, a redeemable character. So yeah, things are getting icky. Things are getting really icky. It also seems like most of the women in this book die. And this is just from the perspective of Mr. Lockwood hearing this story. So present day, Mr. Lockwood and Nellie chatting. Who's dead? Kathy and Hindley's mother is the first one who died. So that would be Mrs. Earnshaw. Hindley's wife died very early on in the book also, leaving him, you know, with a son and bereft. And that's kind of when his downward spiral happened. We learned this chapter that Isabella will die. Obviously, she hasn't died yet in the story, but present day, she's dead. And Kathy is dead. So all of these people are dead. I also anticipate that both Kathy and Isabella are going to have children. So Catherine Heathcliff is alive. So that's good. A woman's alive, and Nellie's alive, so that's good. I love it when women live. You can also tell that these videos aren't scripted and my reactions are unscripted because I'm just kind of like meandering around and I feel like I'm repeating myself 5 times. My thoughts are so scattered and my emotions are all over the place from this book. And also one of the hardest parts about doing this for YouTube is that I want to keep reading, but my voice is so tired and I have to keep to a schedule. So I'm just like waiting in suspense for what's gonna happen. This is nuts. Emily Bronte, what the hell is your damage? And we're only halfway through, like not even. Also, this is kind of an insane book to give to high schoolers and be like, yeah, read this, analyze this. Join me next week as we keep trucking along and finding out what happens in this insane novel, Wuthering Heights.